How do you measure the life of a man who stood at the center of history, but rarely claimed its spotlight? Jermaine Jackson's story is not one of loud triumphs or dramatic reinvention, but of quiet endurance. He helped build one of the most influential musical families the world has ever known, yet spent much of his life balancing loyalty, identity, and sacrifice. While fame amplified the Jackson name, it often muted his inner voice. He lived through poverty, global success, painful divisions, personal regret, and devastating loss, all while trying to remain grounded in faith and responsibility. This is not the simplified version shaped by headlines or comparisons. This is the story of a man who learned to survive emotional storms without applause, who carried grief without spectacle, and who continues searching for peace now that the noise has faded. His life reminds us that strength is often quiet, and legacy is rarely simple. A childhood where survival came before dreams. Jermaine Jackson grew up in a small, crowded home in Gary, Indiana, where space was limited and resources were stretched thin. 11 people shared a 2-bedroom house, leaving little room for privacy, imagination, or rest. Daily life required adaptation and patience, not dreaming. His father worked long hours in a steel mill, carrying the weight of financial responsibility, while his mother managed the household with resilience and faith. Clothes were shared, meals were modest, and comfort was secondary to necessity. The house was always full, but rarely calm. Noise, tension, and responsibility filled every corner. Childhood did not unfold gently. It arrived with expectations early on. In that environment, Jermaine learned to observe rather than demand, to adapt rather than resist. Stability was fragile, and emotional space was scarce. These early years shaped his sense of duty and restraint long before music offered a way forward. Discipline, faith, and the weight of silence. Two opposing forces defined Jermaine's upbringing: his father's rigid discipline and his mother's quiet spiritual strength. His father believed strict structure was the only escape from poverty, and he enforced rules with intensity and high expectations. Fear often replaced comfort, teaching the children to suppress emotion and comply without question. His mother, by contrast, leaned on faith, prayer, and gentleness to keep the family emotionally intact. She offered warmth where she could, but the strain of survival often muted even her softness. Beneath it all lived an unspoken sadness shaped by hardship and loss, something the children felt but rarely discussed. Love existed, but it was restrained and practical rather than expressive. For Jermaine, this balance of discipline and faith created emotional restraint. He learned early that silence could be protective, and that endurance sometimes mattered more than expression. Learning to watch before learning to speak. In a home shaped by pressure and expectation, Jermaine became a quiet child. He learned to listen closely, to read moods, and to adjust his behavior to avoid conflict. Speaking up felt risky, so observation became his strength. He respected authority, even when it carried fear, and admired his mother's calm resilience. Emotions were rarely discussed openly, so Jermaine internalized his own. Over time, this silence became part of his identity. He was thoughtful, sensitive, and deeply aware of the emotional currents around him. Rather than pushing himself forward, he learned to support others, to blend in rather than stand apart. This emotional intelligence later shaped how he approached music and relationships. He didn't seek control or dominance, he sought harmony. Even as a child, Jermaine understood that survival sometimes meant staying quiet and steady while the world moved loudly around you. Fame without time to grow. When the Jackson 5 rose to national fame, Jermaine was still a teenager. Touring schedules were relentless, blending rehearsals, performances, interviews, and travel into a single exhausting cycle. While peers experienced school and friendships, Jermaine experienced hotel rooms and stage lights. He became a co-lead singer, balancing his deeper tone alongside Michael's youthful brilliance. The contrast worked musically, but emotionally it was complex. Fame arrived before emotional maturity, leaving little time to process success or fear. Applause was constant, but solitude followed closely behind. Exhaustion became normal, and silence remained his coping mechanism. He endured without complaint, believing responsibility outweighed personal comfort. While success transformed the family's circumstances, it also isolated them. Jermaine learned that fame does not replace stability or self-understanding. It simply amplifies whatever already exists beneath the surface: loyalty, comparison, and quiet doubt. As Michael's star rose higher, public focus shifted increasingly toward him. Jermaine recognized his brother's extraordinary talent and supported him with genuine love. Still, quiet questions lingered. Not jealousy, but uncertainty. Where did he fit when the spotlight narrowed? Rather than competing, Jermaine chose loyalty. He became the emotional stabilizer, the dependable presence who held the group together. His doubts remained internal, unspoken, processed in private. He valued family unity over personal recognition, even when it meant being overlooked. This choice shaped his identity deeply. He learned to measure worth internally rather than publicly. Still, the emotional cost was real. Standing beside greatness requires humility, but it can also leave unanswered questions. Jermaine carried those questions silently, trusting that contribution mattered even when recognition didn't follow. A decision that fractured everything. The mid-1970s brought a painful turning point. When the brothers chose to leave Motown in search of creative freedom, Jermaine faced an impossible decision. Married into the Motown family, his loyalty was divided between his brothers and his marriage. Choosing either path meant loss. In the end, he stayed behind, a decision that fractured family unity and altered relationships for years. Though love remained, distance grew. Jermaine felt the weight of isolation and regret, knowing his choice carried lasting consequences. He later acknowledged the loneliness that followed. This was not betrayal, but complexity. Life rarely offers clean decisions. For Jermaine, the cost was emotional separation and lingering what-ifs. He learned that loyalty can pull in opposite directions, and that even thoughtful decisions can leave scars. Searching for identity beyond the group. Pursuing a solo career allowed Jermaine to explore who he was outside the group dynamic. His success brought moments of pride and validation, especially when his work was recognized on its own merit. For a brief time, he felt seen, yet comparison remained unavoidable. Michael's unprecedented success redefined global fame, once again shifting attention away. Jermaine supported his brother sincerely, but privately wrestled with questions of purpose. Success didn't erase uncertainty, it simply reframed it. He continued working, creating, and contributing, even when recognition fluctuated. Through this period, Jermaine learned that identity cannot rely on external applause. Fulfillment had to come from within. His journey became less about competing with history and more about accepting his place within it. Love, mistakes, and accountability. Jermaine's personal life reflected the same complexity as his career. Marriage and fatherhood brought joy, but the pressures of fame and emotional exhaustion created distance. Communication faltered, and choices made during periods of confusion led to regret. When relationships ended, they did so without public spectacle, marked by reflection rather than blame. Jermaine carried responsibility for his mistakes, understanding that intention does not erase impact. Parenthood remained central to his sense of purpose, even when circumstances were challenging. Balancing obligations across multiple relationships tested his emotional and financial capacity. Public judgment added strain, but he continued striving to show care and accountability. Over time, he learned that love requires presence, honesty, and humility. Growth came not from perfection, but from acknowledgement and effort. Grief, loss, and the search for peace. The loss of Michael changed Jermaine irrevocably. Grief arrived quietly but deeply, reshaping memory and identity. Announcing his brother's passing to the world was one of the most painful moments of his life, blending personal devastation with public responsibility. Subsequent losses, family, friends, and mentors, deepened the silence. Aging brought reflection, and reflection brought faith. In later years, Jermaine embraced a quieter life defined by prayer, simplicity, and introspection. Music remained, but no longer as obligation. Fatherhood evolved, marked by listening rather than instruction. Legacy, he realized, is not measured by charts or headlines, but by resilience and growth. In the absence of noise, Jermaine found acceptance, and in acceptance, he found peace, the quiet truth of a life fully lived.